The Houston Cougars fall to the Florida Gators last night in the NAAC championship college basketball game, 65-63. And we also have a sensitive topic that we got to cover this evening right here on the replay. So buckle up and let's ride. Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the replay where we're still trying to make your day. I'm your host, Jabril A. Rashad, featuring I Am Student Athlete, and we do have a lot to cover this evening. So buckle up, and we're going to cover a sensitive topic that everybody's been talking about the stabbing of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at the hands of 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony, students up there in the Frisco ISD. But before we get into any of that, I want you all to hit that subscribe, like, and share button as we continue to grow the channel. I want to thank you for your time, for joining me. And if you catch this later on, I want to still thank you for listening in. So right off the bat, I want to cover last night's game real quick between the Houston Cougars and the Florida Gators. Again, the Houston Cougars fall to the Florida Gators 65-63. And what a wild game it was towards the end. And I must say, the two guards, or should you say maybe three guards or a small forward, the way they played down the stretch was just unbelievable. I couldn't really believe that, what I was watching, what I was seeing, like many of you guys, they only committed actually 2 turnovers against Florida, 9 turnovers, and they have 3 in the waning moments of the entire game. So I want to show a little bit of that towards the end right there. I want to show a little bit of that towards the end with this game and how it turned out. Now you see the score 64-63.
65-63. 2-2. And that foul line has been at the level that made the 2 big ones the other night. National championship is in the balance. 13 seconds left. Florida leads it by 2. Uzan gonna go. Uzan, give it up. Cryer, 6 seconds. 5 seconds. Sharp. He won't. He can't touch it. He can't. 1 second. And it's over. Florida's back on top of the college basketball world. Championship madness.
Yeah, so that was absolutely crazy the way they closed out that last 3 minutes of that basketball game. I guess turnabout is fair play. If you're a Duke fan, I guess you felt some type of relief because it happened to Duke on Saturday. Duke had that game sold up and didn't finish and didn't close the deal. But it's just crazy to me that Kerry, I don't know if many of you all knew this, but Kerry was on that championship team back in 2021 with Baylor University. He was a freshman at the moment, so he's a 5th-year senior, and he had a good run in a tournament. I can't take anything away from him from that. But when you talk about playing in a championship game, that's why I say everybody's not built for the bright lights, especially in those crucial moments when it's about getting a bucket or getting a stop. And this is some of the play that I did not understand his play in the closing minute, being such a seasoned veteran, a seasoned player. But check this out.
The block by Howe. Cryer didn't have a chance. Great help. Clayton over to Martin. He drives. Martin Baker, no. Foul call.
So again, that was Kerry turning the ball over on the dribble. He got down on the baseline and didn't have nowhere to go, elevated, and then he had the ball stolen from him. And then I think not too long after that, you had Sharp dribbling to a double team, and Kerry standing over in the corner. This is after he made the free throw. Sharp come down with the ball and turn the ball right over again, while Sharp was standing over there in the corner. This is the play I believe right here.
Defense. Shot clock down to 15. Sharp using the screen. Sharp with 10. She lost it. Out of bounds. Turnover.
So that was the turnover by Sharp. And I used to play the point guard position. And one of the things I know about playing the point guard position that you never break your man down or run him over there to the trap. You're going left or right. You got to break him down to the top of the key. They only was down 2 points. And, of course, toward the end, he tried to go for the 3, and never looked for Roberts at all on any of those possessions. And for me, having watched Houston play, pretty much, not I won't say the entire season, but at least the latter part of the season, this was just not something that I know Kevin Sampson definitely doesn't coach. They was very scrappy on defense, but man, the way they broke down the last 3 minutes of that basketball game and make them seem like somebody should be in handcuffs by Thursday because it seemed like there was a conspiracy that was going on. So anyway, they lost to the Florida Gators. Give Clayton Jr. and company a lot of credit for staying in there, hanging with it, and making the key shots that they had. But to lose by 65-63 seems like 41 years ago. Many of us that remember that great Houston Cougar team, the Five Slammer Jammer, the way they lost to North Carolina State up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I just thought they're like, wow. And you know what was interesting? They lost that game by 2. And so for many of y'all who don't remember that, let me give you a little highlight of that.
There with Wittenberg and Lowe. Down to 25 seconds. Dangerous pass. This is a really interesting strategy by Houston. They're aggressive now. Not staying back. Remember, they have a team in there to block anything that goes inside. Down to 14 seconds. Oh, almost stolen by Drexler. Boy, is he good at that. They've got to drive to the basket. It's down to 7 seconds. You can see the time. Wittenberg. Oh, that's a long ways. They won it. Off the dunk.
So wow, I don't know which one hurts the most. I probably would say for me, being a young adolescent teenager myself, I remember the game as though it was yesterday and how they lost that. The guy actually shot an air ball, and North Carolina State power forward Lorenzo Charles catch the ball as though it was an alley-oop and dunk it, slam it back in, and they went on to win that NCAA championship again at the score of 54-52. A 2-point loss, just like the other night, last night. Houston losing 65-63. So I was like, wow, I guess it's just not in the cards for the University of Houston, because man, they've been there so many times and have lost the. I guess this will be the third one. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they lost with Elvin Hayes when he was playing for the University of Houston as well back in the late 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But again, they come up short again, losing to the Florida State Gators, 65-63. So, we can't shade, Florida. They came down last year. This tournament, the final was actually played in Houston. This year, it was played in San Antonio. So you had the home crowd behind you. And the way you fought on Saturday to come back and lose the way you did last night was just incredible to me, especially with the guard play. I just wouldn't imagine that both Carey and Sharp and the other point guard, actually, Uzet, I think that's his name, they never went to Roberts, number 13, in the post at no time. And you got to break your man off the dribble. So, again, wanted to cover that. Big shout out to Florida once again. So now, guys, turning the page to a much, much needed topic, sensitive topic. I got to put that out there. I got to lay the predicate for what I want to go into, because I'm going to be showing a video in just a second, which is going to allow me the opportunity to rebut a lot of the things that let me find the right word that I want to use. Uncle Tom, I'm going to say the information that he was using or presenting on his podcast. And I really do hate using the word Uncle Tom, but sometimes it just applies when people are so slanted in their view and have no balance, or don't walk with any balance in referencing what they're saying. It's just crazy to me. But this guy goes on his podcast, and believe me, I don't like to repurpose other people's podcasts. And if I do, I like to give them the credit. But in this case right here, you'll just have to find and look him up, because I don't want to give him too much credit just based on some of his conservative views. And I don't have a problem with conservatism. I have a problem when you're not balanced with your conservatism. That's the issue that I have, because he actually spoke out on the incident that happened to Miss Sonia Massey, if many of y'all recall, up in Illinois, when the police officer whom she called to her house wind up executing this lady, murdering this lady in her own kitchen. all because she said that I rebuke you in the name of the Lord. And he didn't want to get any water on him, whether if it was warm water, hot water, or not. So, the language that she used, many African American police officers, I feel, if they had been investigating that scene, I think she would be still alive today, because I think we understand one another. That's just my personal view on it. But there's no way you're going to use a gun against water. She has water and you have a gun. But yet this individual, who I'm going to play his video in just a second, seems to not even get that. All he does is talk about, because he's a police officer, and try to downplay African American people. And he promises all he's doing is going by the law. Well, that's your interpretation of the law. But before I get into any more of that, I'm gonna go ahead and let you all listen to some of this rhetoric that he's spewing, and I'm gonna come back and comment and rebuke point for point of what he's talking about and things that I see that he left out. But y'all check this video out.
As a people, don't feel as it's right what they're doing to this young black man right here.
If there's any human being in the United States of America that deserves presumption of innocence right now today, it has to be Karmelo Anthony.
For them to raise $150,000 for this kid is insane to me. And what it speaks to, in my opinion, is the racism that's involved in this. Because if that young black boy would have killed another black boy at a track meet, we wouldn't hear about it. There would be no GoFundMe. There would be no, oh, we need to stand with him. It's because he killed a white kid. And it's a race war underneath the surface of our country, mostly projected by black people.
Now, this individual claims that there's a race war and that African American people wouldn't have did a GoFundMe, and simply because it's a black boy who killed a white guy, this is the only reason why that we're doing the GoFundMe. Now, let me take my simple approach, because there's another video I will be showing in just a second here regarding his rhetoric. When I first heard this story, I was very disappointed. And normally I wouldn't have did the channel right here on the Replay Sports Show. I probably would have did it on my podcast show, which is the Blackvocracy. But it was two athletes, high school athletes. And of course, because this is on the backs of what we just did with the I Am Student Athlete Youth Educational Entrepreneur Summit, I felt compelled to come back and talk about it on the Replay Sports Show featuring I Am Student Athlete. I felt compelled to do that because we just had a summit, again, speaking about some of the very things that's going on within our community. All of the violence in the streets with the young people and the guns and them, shooting and killing one another. We just got through talking about this at the summit. So again, I felt compelled to go ahead and do it on this particular channel. But I'm going to get into what I really want to discuss and rebut this individual's point by point of what he said and misinterpreted. Okay, because he wasn't there, neither was I. I took a balanced approach to this because, again, under my umbrella, in my faith, we don't lean too far left, nor do we lean too far right. We have to, ride this thing out and take the middle course with balance. So it's not about black or white. But unfortunately, there are those who will make it about black and white. And the very thing that he tried to say in terms of he's applying the law, I'm only concerned about the law. It don't matter to me if he was black, if he was white. I'm only talking. Well, it don't sound like it based on the information that you just put out there. It doesn't sound like that you're taking a balanced approach based on the research that you gave. Now, had you took a position of providing full disclosure, which I'm going to be doing in just a second, had you done a full disclosure, then I could have given you more credit in terms of what it is that you was projecting. But I'm going to deal with that in just a second because that's not what you did. You just told a slanted view from one side of it. So again, this is the second video that I would like to play from this individual talking about African Americans who took up a GoFund from the young brother Karmelo Anthony.
As a people, don't feel as it's right what they're doing to this young black man right here.
If there's any human being in the United States of America that deserves presumption of innocence right now today, it has to be Karmelo Anthony.
Black people rally around the kid that did something wrong because they don't want the white boy to be right. They don't want white people to be right. They don't want white people to be on television saying that this black kid is a thug. They don't care that the black kid, I think that some of them do care, but I think that they're avoiding the point that the black kid actually took the life of somebody unnecessarily. Let me give you a couple factors here, which will bolster the legal argument that I have. I do believe that Karmelo Anthony will be found guilty if he goes to court. I think he's going to do a plea deal because he knows he's dead to rights. His attorneys know he's dead to rights. According to Texas State Penal Code, he will go to jail and be sentenced probably more harshly than he would if he do a plea deal. I think he's going to do a plea deal, and I think in the plea deal, they're going to give him manslaughter charges, and he's only going to do 5 or 8 years in prison, which is a travesty. If he goes to trial, this is how he loses, unequivocally. In the state of Texas, they charged him with first-degree murder. First-degree murder is when you murder somebody intentionally or knowingly causing the death of another person. That's subsection 1. Subsection 2 is intending to cause serious bodily injury and commit an act clearly dangerous to human life that results in somebody's death. They got him on the first statute because he knowingly and intentionally decided to poke the boy in the heart with a knife. The second statutory claim here, which they can get him on as well, is intending to cause serious bodily injury. If you didn't intend to kill the guy, but you should know that stabbing somebody in the heart could cause serious damage, serious bodily injury to that person, and is clearly negligent and is dangerous to human life. They got him again. Here's another one. Commit or attempt to commit a felony other than manslaughter during which they perform an act clearly dangerous to human life that causes death. Let me add to how that's a problem. Because carrying a weapon on a school campus is a felony offense. No, it's a misdemeanor offense. Let's go down to the law, because I want y'all to see this very clearly. If you go down to Texas law, it says that it's a knife blade exception, right? If it's 55 inches or shorter, generally speaking, it could be used or be in a public place. However, there is restrictions as to where this can be presented. It says right here, let me go up a little bit. I go down here. It says violating these restrictions can lead to criminal charges with penalties varying based on specific circumstances and locations. For instance, carrying a local restricted knife is prohibited in areas generally considered a Class C misdemeanor. And these areas are obviously in sporting events, right? It says carrying a knife regardless of blade length. Here's the caveat here. Carrying a knife, any knife, regardless of blade length, at a school sporting function in Texas is generally prohibited unless you have an explicit authorization to do so. So not only was he already committing a crime by having a knife at a school sporting event, he knowingly and intentionally struck the kid. Whether he tried to kill him or not is still under the grounds of first-degree murder, or they can clarify for second-degree murder. So it's either one of the two that they're going to have him under. But here's where the defense is going to argue. The defense is going to argue that he was acting in self-defense. Now, here's where the self-defense claim falls apart. In the state of Texas, and probably most places, that your self-defense claim is completely eliminated if you are provoking somebody, right? You can't claim self-defense after provocation. So that means that if I'm going somewhere and I'm like, what's up, bro? Come on, fight. I'll fight all of y'all. I didn't went up to somebody, provoking them to a physical altercation. They beat me up, and then I pull a gun and shoot them. Well, you can't call for self-defense if you provoke somebody to engage with you. And his own admission of saying, touch me and see what happens. Going under somebody's tent that don't belong to you, that you're not associated with, refusing to leave, and then threatening and saying, touch me. That means that you cannot lawfully remove me because I'm going to do something to you. So
I decided to cut it off right there because I was really trying to restrain myself from having some verbal conniption with myself inwardly and outwardly, because the statement he made regarding the self-defense claim is so asinine, is so foolishness. foolish that it shows his prejudice against this young African-American boy. Yeah. First and foremost, again, as I stated, if you're going to be truthful and forthcoming, then have balance and provide the individuals or the audience that you're speaking with full disclosure. First and foremost, he's not an attorney, just like I stated at the outcome, and neither am I. But I do know something about the law, being a criminal justice major and having my own interactions with the law and having to file and supplement appeal briefs with a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court. So I've delved into law, and my brother's an attorney. So I know something about the law. I understand Texas penal codes and all of that. And the problem that I really have with this narrative that he's given, that he can't use the self-defense claim, is simply this. See, he left out something, and he gave it his interpretation, using the word provocation, where he provoked Austin Metcalf, which is not, it cannot be substantiated. Now, again, I wasn't there, neither was he. But the police officers, according to reports, have over 70 people whom they've talked with, and it's still an ongoing investigation. But they have several sworn affidavits right now, and those affidavits, including Austin Metcalf's twin brother, said that his own brother assaulted young Karmelo Anthony. Now, he tried to say, I'll give an example, which was a really poor, weak example. He said that the provocation was if he provoked him. In other words, his example was, if I tell you to come on, let's fight, and then I get beat down and turn around and pull out a gun and then shoot you with it, then that's on you. First of all, let's get something understood, because it's been very well reported. Karmelo Anthony didn't start this fight. This is by the witness's testimony. Then he came with the narrative that he was under a tent that he didn't have authorization to be under. Well, guess what? Neither did Austin Metcalf. Neither did Austin Metcalf. No one was given authority for seating arrangements, which is why I say that the school district has some culpability in this as well, because there was no one monitoring this. You have schools from different schools, that's competing against one another. And Karmelo Anthony happens to run track from the reports that are being made. He runs track, whereas Austin Metcalf wasn't participating in the track meet. So he had no authority to try to remove someone from the tent. So the same thing you're saying, that he couldn't make claim for being under the tent, you left out the part that neither did Austin Metcalf. So this is what I'm saying. You're giving a skewed point of view, which I don't like. I try my very best to not make it about black and white and doing the same thing that you claim to be doing in terms of applying the law. But you're failing on all angles because you have a certain predisposed disposition. This individual with this podcast, you have a certain disposed disposition because you tried to use some of the same arguments in the Sonia Massey case, which falls short. You failed at the presentation that you was trying to give. Now, here's the thing, the caveat, as you would like to say, that you left out. The caveat that you left out. In your assessment of the reports that you received and what you was reading as the Texas Penal Code law, here's what you left out. See, there's a such thing that is called a duty to warn. A duty to warn, which is a tort, by the way. And let me just give you a short reading of what that duty to warn says. It says specifically, a duty to warn is a concept that arises in the law of torts in a number of circumstances, indicating that a party will be held liable for injuries caused to another, where the party had the opportunity to warn the other of a hazard and failed to do so. See, you left that out. This is the issue I have, because you left that part out, the duty to warn. And also there's another definition given by a duty to warn where it stipulates that a person has the obligation to let a person know that there's a risk factor that's involved if you attempt to do what it is that you're thinking about doing. So in this case, in the concept of Karmelo Anthony, he told young Austin Metcalf, touch me and you're going to see what's going to happen. That's giving him a warning. That's his duty, his obligation in giving this other young kid a warning. Don't put your hands on me. Anytime that you put your hands on another individual, I don't care who it is, black, white, yellow, green, purple, it doesn't matter, without their permission, under the law, that's considered an assault. It is considered an assault. Then when you factor in, because again, no one really knows what was the mindset of Karmelo Anthony. You have this is what I call the biggest causation of them all. You have a cause and then you have an effect. And based on some of the reports that are being reported in referencing the twin brothers, they were sort of being bullies. And they have been bullies before because, you know, they into this hunting. I'm gonna put up some pictures in just a second to close that door, foreclose that on the narrative that they was trying to give through the media. But no one knows what was going on inside of the mind of young Karmelo Anthony, because there you have a twin brother whom anybody with any common sense would have the sense to be able to say, you know, if I get into it with this guy, what are the chances of his brother, twin brother, I might add, jumping into the fight? And for those of you all who are sitting back saying, well, you don't, you know, a kid, you know, grab you or slap you or push you or whatever he did, I don't care if he even touched him with his index finger, that's still an assault. You can't put your hands on nobody. But if he's thinking that, hey, I could get jumped, then let me remind you guys, let me remind you people, because I know of a story of a young man who got jumped. He got kicked in the head, stayed in a coma for several months, and lost his life based on a jump. So you can't sit here and say, well, you know, he had a knife against a push. When you're outweighed by 200 pounds combined, if two individuals decide to jump on you. So he's in fear of his life. Yes, he can make that argument the same way police officers do and many other people to get away with the crimes that they've committed. For example, Sonia Massey and the police officer, once again, he said he feared that she was going to pour hot water on him. And everybody that was on the police officer side was like, well, she had a pot of boiling water. But you're talking about a gun against boiling water. But see, the narrative always get changed when it's one of us. He had every right, if he felt that he was in danger, that he feared for his life, because there are two prongs that irregardless of what the individual was talking about on his podcast, what he may not know or understand when it comes to the references of law, there are two prongs, the two hurdles that the prosecutor has to get over. One would be they have to show what they call in law a mens rea. That's what it's called, mens rea. MENSREA. Look it up, mens rea. Then you have to show that he had an active rea. Now, the active rea may not come into play simply because we know an act was committed. Okay, but the mens rea is related to a predisposed disposition. In other words, you have to prove intent. Then there's another level of intent that they will have to prove, that he had a premeditated disposition, a predisposed disposition, premeditated disposition to commit the crime that he's alleged of committing. And that's going to be a tough hurdle to try to cross over. That's a high bar, because you can't prove the threshold that this young man actually was sitting in the tent and he was just counting down the hours and knew that he was going to get into an argument with Austin Metcalf and that he was going to stab him in the chest. There's no way to prove that. So yes, he does have a legitimate argument that he was you know, using the self-defense argument that he was defending himself. Every creature has a right to defend him or herself. That is something that is ordained and given and bestowed upon mankind by nature's creator. Everyone has the ability to defend themselves. So this guy's asinine in his comments and his statements in terms of, you know, that argument is not going to fly. He can't use, you know, the self-defense because it falls apart because he was the one that provoked him. No, That's not provoking him. That's not provoking him. And I don't see any judge being able to give the prosecutors that argument that he was the instigator in all of this. Because again, Austin Metcalf decided to get up, challenge him using verbal euphemisms. And this guy, obviously there was a conversation going on because it provoked him to respond and say, touch me and see what happened. So in order for him to respond that way, something had to have been said by the other party. That's my point. But again, you change the narrative when it doesn't look like one of us. Yeah, you change that narrative. Because let me remind you of a young boy, age of 14, well, two young individuals by the age of 14. For some of y'all who may have forgotten. That's why I like to say, change the narrative. Do the name Emmett Till ring a bell? The young boy killed down in the Delta of Mississippi, Money, Mississippi, pulled out of his uncle's house late at night. Body was crushed by a mechanics fan who was shot in the face. And these individuals was acquitted at trial. See, you can't change the narrative or use the narrative when it fits your billing. Oh, you say, oh, well, that was then, this is now. No, it's still the same. The principle's still the same. Then what about the other young boy, the youngest individual, black or white or yellow, the youngest boy to ever be executed in this country by the name of George Stinney, accused of killing two little white girls. And it came out later on that he didn't even do it. They said it was a traveler, a drifter, a hobo, if you will, that was on some train, that was riding a train, a white male who killed those two little white girls. But yet they executed this young boy at the age of 14. What? And then let's just bring it up currently today. Let's talk about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. His stand his ground rules that he was acquitted on. So it just white folks, some, I'm not going to paint them all with a broad brush, but a great majority of them, it just amazes me that when it comes to you all, there's always a narrative to be changed. Now, the only thing that he said on his podcast in terms of him not going to trial and him pleading out to a manslaughter, he's partially right. But it's not going to be because him not going to trial. The prosecutor's going to see that their case is going to fall apart. I really believe that. And their case is going to fall apart based on the evidence that's going to be presented. And he has a legitimate reason to use a self-defense argument. And it's going to fall apart. And they're going to realize that we're going to have to come with an involuntary manslaughter charge. Simply because we don't have a strong enough case. The case is going to be clouded. That's my opinion about it. Since he was entitled to his opinion, I'm entitled to mine. That's how I see this thing playing out. That they're going to have reduced charges, and he's going to be given the opportunity because he did have the weapon inside of his bag, which they say that is a misdemeanor. So he can plea out to that, carrying a weapon on school property. So he's guilty on that, but that's a lesser offense. But again, we're living in what I would deem as weird times, crazy times. And you all heard me say last week when I was uploading my podcast and the videos for the summit, I was talking about these line dances and all these parents and stuff trying to learn the new dance instead of learning the new information that's going on, learning how to connect with their child even more. You want to learn the new steps and grab your fans and put boots on the ground, but you won't put real boots on the ground for your own child. And then you wonder why when things like this happen. See, we got to start taking a better look, taking self-inventory of what's really real and what's really going on, what's really happening in our community. Because we are just as responsible. If the school would have been looking at what I've been talking about, this task force, they came out and said, we're looking at what they call juvenile criminal engagement. Juvenile criminal engagement. They're not going to allow and continue to allow commerce to be interrupted, where you got young people who are running up into retail stores and grabbing stuff off the rack, or breaking into jewelry stores and breaking the glasses and taking jewelry out. They're not going to continue to allow that to happen. They're already in the process of building new juvenile prisons. And yes, the numbers are not in our favor. So that's why I produce certain things like I produce to get out in front of this thing. Because some of y'all will be crying, oh, my child, woe's me. Oh, this is so wrong. You know, where's the justice? Well, the justice starts when you recognize something is not right. That's when justice is supposed to start. I said it once, I'll say it again. We got to get back to the basics and the fundamentals of scripture. When it says that it takes a village to raise a child, we got to get back to the basics and the fundamentals. Get out of the line dances. Get out of all of the parties and the R&B parks and all this. Get out of the cigar lounges. You know, there are times for those things. I'm not saying not to be a social creature. There are times and moments for those things, but there are also times for things like this when they occur that God is watching. You got to be trying to build your resume for the Most High God. So we got to get out of the line dances and the cigar bar lounges and all this stuff and pay close attention to our children, because as soon as they finish with these illegals, they're going to have a task force that's going to come down the pipeline called juvenile criminal engagement. And don't be surprised if your son is one of those individuals who's caught up in that dragnet. Now, you've been warned, because again, they're going to try to change the image. They're going to try to change the image, because another issue that I really took exception to is that you tried to put Karmelo Anthony out in the front and allow this young man to be exacerbated by the media and frowned upon and put him out there as though he was a thug. See, this is the image they try to sell us. They wanted us to see him with this air gun. That's not even a real gun. That's not even a real gun. That's an air gun. And yet they got Austin Metcalf as though he's this innocent young child that just had his life taken away. But meanwhile, they never told us of this particular image. They never showed us the image of Karmelo Anthony with his suit on as a student athlete, I might add. They never showed us the image of Karmelo Anthony working at Foot Locker, keeping a job as a young teenager. They didn't show us that image. They didn't show us the fact that this young man, as a young child, as a bystander, saved another child from drowning inside of a pool. They didn't show us the image of Karmelo Anthony. They didn't show that image. But the image they show us and want us to see was this image. But isn't it ironic? He's holding an air gun, which is a fake gun. But yet, here you have Austin Metcalf and his brother in army fatigue, military fatigue, holding real rifles. But they don't want you to see that image. See, you can't try this case in the media the way you want to try this case in the media. Why didn't you put this picture up when you was trying to desecrate young Karmelo Anthony in the media? And this is the problem that I have. It shouldn't be a black or white thing. It really shouldn't be. It should be a right or wrong thing. And we should wait on the law to all the information being ascertained and gathered together, because again, no one wins in this situation. No one wins. Two families are hurt and pretty much destroyed from this perspective of having young children, and one is no longer here and the other one could lose, years off his life. Had an opportunity to go on with his life and do something great. So no one really wins. The only silver lining in this that I see is that it happened up in Frisco. That was supposed to be an affluent area and not in the 75241, because in areas like Frisco and Plano, they have this disposition where they say, oh, well, this doesn't happen up here. That's down, where the blacks live in the 75241. Now, this goes to show you exactly what I've been talking about, that death has no boundaries. Death cares nothing about your lifestyle. It cares nothing about your age. It cares nothing about your job. It cares nothing about your fame, or you can be famous or infamous. It has no wiggle room when it comes to truth, and when it's time for the angel of death to appear to take your soul back to its creator. And so, yes, it can happen, and it did happen up in Frisco. So that's the only silver lining that I can really see that has come out of this situation, that it shows that it can happen anywhere, and that we need to all be involved. Again, this is not a black or white thing. It's a right or wrong thing. And you can't slant the narrative because you caught up in your emotions and you can't see clearly, and you lose all rational thinking because you're allowing your prejudice to seep out front. Yeah, this is a serious issue that we have in this country regardless. But again, it just amazes me. All the years that we've been in this country, African-American people, how the narrative gets changed when it's one of us who are carrying a weapon, which everybody carries a weapon, seem like nowadays anyway, but it's actually used against a white guy. When it's the reverse in the case of George Zimmerman and the police officer who killed Sandra Massey, oh, there's no outcry. There's no outcry because you don't, why? Because you don't value the life of an African-American person the way you would one of yours. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be a human condition. It should be a human condition. And this is how we need to approach this, not based on black and white, but you all make it black and white with your ignorance. You make it black and white with your inability to go back and research, or your insensitivities, because you don't care about a black person's life. Well, we do care. We do care. Because again, you can't intimidate someone and be a bully, and then you want to start it, and then you want to dictate how it's going to go. No, he gave him the duty to warn. And again, this individual makes absolutely no sense in his argument, saying that Karmelo Anthony would not be able to use a defense argument. First and foremost, you're not a part of the executive branch of the judicial body. That's for a judge to decide. Judicially, their sworn duty is to interpret the law. You're a police officer, so you're supposed to execute the law. So now you're crossing over into their jurisdiction, giving your little limited, because all y'all are not that smart. I've dealt with you guys. You're not that bright. You're not that smart. So don't come on no podcast pretending like you know the law, because you don't know the law. I know the law better than some attorneys know the law. Believe me, I do. You know why? Because I understand merchant law, commercial law, which some of them don't even understand. They go to college just to get certified and pass a bar, which is an acronym for the British Accreditation Registry. And a lot of them don't even understand that. They don't even know how law has evolved since the Roman law. And then they get the law from the Mosaic law, which is the laws of Moses. So we can take it all the way back to Deuteronomy and bring it all the way front to the English law, which that's what the United States of America and Congress goes by today. So you go on your podcast trying to paint a certain narrative because that's your disposition. That's how you feel, because you did it before with Miss Sandra Massey. You the one that's out of step, because you don't have no balance about what you're saying, because you just can't stand black folks and you black. You remind me of the black police officer who was in the movie Boys in the Hood. Now, I do understand some of the things that we do to ourselves, and we vilify ourselves, and we do some ignorant stuff our own self. That I get. And I'm not signing off on any of that when you take another brother's life. I'm not signing on that. I'm not even signing on the fact that Karmelo Anthony took another person's life. But what I'm going to sign off on is the law and the right to defend himself. I'm signing off on that. And based on the reports that have come out once again, and the sworn affidavits that has been taken by the police officers, he had every right to defend himself. And I do think he has a legitimate case of the self-defense argument. You may agree to disagree, but that makes me no never mind, because I'm looking at the law. The same statutes that you're reading, the Texas Penal Code, those are the same statutes that I'm reading and looking at as well. Because it's just ironic to me. You went on there and you said all of that, but you just happen to leave out the duty to warn. You left out all that. You said all the other stuff, but left out the duty to warn. And that's what young Karmelo Anthony did. He told him, if you touch me again, you will see what's going to happen. Now, automatically, if you wasn't filled with this bravado or this brazen attitude, you should have bagged off. No, but see, you thought he was pump faking. Let's call it what it is. You thought Karmelo Anthony was pump faking when he told you, touch me and you're going to see what's going to happen. Right off the bat, you should have backed up 10 feet. You know, they say, give me 50 feet in the song. Well, maybe you should have backed up 50 feet. But no, when you got individuals, you got a little crowd under the tent, and you got to prove yourself oh, this black boy, this is the disposition that some of them have. They ain't saying it outwardly, but inwardly he's saying, wait a minute, you this little, I don't want to use the ninja word, is talking to me this way in front of my people. Because somebody said he had his little girlfriend was on the tent. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but I can see how the situation went left, went from right to left, real, and from 0 to 60 real fast. Because when Karmelo responded how he did, he couldn't take that. He couldn't take that. That pissed him off. So he got to prove to his camp now, to his people, oh, yeah, I'm bigger than you. I'm going to take you out, da-da-da-da-da. And so he responded, touch me and you're going to see what's going to happen. Instead of him bagging up, no, he had to let the bravado, listening to the whispers of the shaitan, the Satan. And this is where he's really crafted at. And when he did, he responded accordingly how he felt out of fear. And if he feared that he was about to get jumped or whatever it is, that's what he felt. That's his mens rea, as they say in law. And no one can say what was going on in his mind if he felt that way. If you use that same argument or allow police officers to use that same argument, then the rules still apply. It's no different when the police officer went to the guy's house and he was really had a learning disability. And his mom is the one that actually, many of y'all may have probably remembered this. His mom called the police to the place, and he had a screwdriver. Now you have a gun and he has a screwdriver. But again, police officers are not trained to shoot you in the leg. Some of us would say, wouldn't it be common sense? You got a stick, waving a stick, and you got a gun, then I'll just, shoot him in the leg. No. That's not how they train. They are trained to shoot center mass, to eliminate the threat. That's how they're trained. But logic would dictate, if a person has a stick or a screwdriver, why not just wound them? That's not how they train. But see, you don't want to apply those same rules to this situation. When a guy say he assaulted another person and he pulls out a knife. No. But again, I can't go with the narrative. I've again, when I first heard of this is a tragedy on all levels. When I first heard of this travesty, my prayers went out to the Metcalf family as well as the Anthony family. I wasn't looking at color, black or white, but then I started seeing how they was trying to paint the narrative of Karmelo Anthony in the media. Then I started reading all of the comments, asinine comments. Oh, he deserved the death penalty. Oh, he need to get life in prison. Oh, he needs just all types of epithets that was being cast or spewed on this young man. And I'm saying, so none of that mattered. He had a 3.7 GPA, that he was the captain of his football team, that he was a stand-up guy in his community. He had a job that he worked. He had 21 scholarship offers to go to college. None of that matters. All of a sudden now he's supposed to spend the rest of his life based on a 2-minute decision. That's asinine to me. So yes, I had to get involved in the conversations that was being had on social media. And believe me, I responded to a lot of those comments that was being said regarding this particular case. I responded to a lot of the case. I want to thank you all for joining me again. This is the replay where we're still trying to make your day. I'm your host, Jabril A. Rashad. We're talking about the curious case of Karmelo Anthony. The curious case of Karmelo Anthony. I know many of y'all have seen it, read it, even responded to it. And we're talking about it because it's one of those topics that I think it's a teaching moment. It should be a teaching moment. It should bring communities together to be able to still talk. We know that there is a certain narrative that's still out there. They have a problem with African-American people that's raising a GoFundMe account for young Karmelo Anthony, which I'm glad that they did, because to set this young man's bail at $1 million, absolutely that's a violation of his 8th Amendment right. Absolutely they should have another hearing to have that bond lowered and reduced. Absolutely. Because they said the guy who killed George Floyd, I think his bond was set at $300,000. And someone else, I think the one who killed the young lady Sandra, I can't think of her name right now, that was traveling down to Prairie View. I think they set his bond at $300,000. But you set this young brother's bond at $1 million based on the evidence. Yes, they got to lower that bond based on the evidence. based on the sworn affidavits and what's been reported. Again, I'm only going off the same information that everybody else is privy to. But again, if you're already trying to try him in the media and you already have your prejudice out front because now you want to have these sentimental emotions, oh, you know, he killed someone and a push shouldn't be worth a guy getting stabbed. I wouldn't disagree with that narrative. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with the narrative. The problem that I really have is when you don't use the same rule of thumb to evaluate every other situation that happens. Again, talking about Sonia Massey standing in her house with some water, and he has a gun against some water. I didn't hear any of you all, talking about this issue, typing this information on or your thoughts or your views on social media when this police officer killed this woman in her own house, execution style, because he shot in the head. A gun against some water. Where was the outcry then for this woman to say this police officer, he shouldn't have did that? She had some water. You didn't say that. But in this case, you saying, well, the young man was pushed, grabbed, hit, slapped, whatever happened. He was assaulted, and yet he used a knife. Now we got an outcry. All I'm asking for is balance. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. That's all we're asking for is balance. Don't let your prejudice arise. And then you look at this thing with a patch over your eye. You see it only one way like this. And that's through the white lens. Because it's a little young white male who was deceased or unalived. And again, my heart does go out to this young man and his family. Because again, they both was wrong in their decision making. 2 minutes cost someone their life and someone else a possible time, a bid in prison. A 2-minute critical thinking should have been involved. So what are we teaching our young people? Or are we too busy dancing? Again, this is why we're going to continue with the summits. We're going to continue we're embarking on doing some teen summit in terms of where we want to get with the community leaders, other 501c3, and we're going to have another sit down, a Q&A, and we'll continue with the summits. But these are the goals and the things that we have to do. Because this is a tragedy. Again, it's a travesty on all levels and should not have happened, but it did. It did happen. But again, for those of you who are just joining me, I want to still welcome you all to the show. And I'm going to play this video one more time because, again, this individual, in case you didn't see the video when I played the first time, this is the individual who I am rebutting, and based on what he's saying and his narrative.
Wrong. Black people rally around the kid that did something wrong because they don't want the white boy to be right. They don't want white people to be right. They don't want white people to be on television saying that this black kid is a thug. They don't care that the black kid, I think that some of them do care, but I think that they're avoiding the point that the black kid actually took the life of somebody unnecessarily. Let me give you a couple factors here which will bolster the legal argument that I have. I do believe that Karmelo Anthony will be found guilty if he goes to court. I think he's going to do a plea deal because he knows he's dead to rights. His attorneys know he's dead to rights. According to Texas State Penal Code, he will go to jail and be sentenced probably more harshly than he would if he do a plea deal. I think he's going to do a plea deal, and I think in the plea deal, they're going to give him manslaughter charges, and he's only going to do 5 or 8 years in prison, which is a
Now, he's saying 5-8 years in prison, which is a trap. See, this guy here is he's really, because he's a police officer, a conservative guy. He never really give black people any type of credit, and then when he do, he really don't really mean it. He's just trying to, for whatever reason, I guess, protect some of the African Americans that's in his family. But again, he has no way of knowing what this guy will get. I've already said a plea deal will be based on him carrying a weapon, not because on the murder. I don't think they can really, again, you got to have 12 juries that will agree. And I just don't think you're going to get a 12-man woman jury that's going to agree on all charges that he's been charged with, especially not no first-degree murder, because you can't, again, you cannot prove that it was premeditated. You can't prove that it was premeditated. He has to have a mens rea to be able to do. That's one of the prongs, to show that he had a predisposed disposition, that was his whole aim from start to finish. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. So he don't have no knowledge of this case as far as I'm concerned. And then he need to do himself a favor, man. Just go ahead and just wrap up your podcast when you start talking foolish like that, because that's not gonna happen. So again, guys, I had to come on here and address this issue, that this hot topic issue that's going around. Everybody's pretty much talking about it. We need to address these things, get back and talk to our youth, get back to the basics, the fundamentals, and really have a sit down and conversation with our youth. Again, this have been the Replay Sports Show featuring I Am Student Athlete. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, share button for me. We're still growing the channel. Please tell someone to tell someone. We're continuing to do this, and we got some other things that we're going to be working toward that's coming up real soon. So again, I want to thank all of you who came on. Again, let's pray for both families. Hopefully the law will prevail in this case, and there's no politicking and nobody is paid under the table. And it's over there in Collin County, which I really don't like if he can't get a fair trial. But hopefully God saw it all, and God knows the intentions of both parties and what was said. And I think if you let the law express itself, I think justice will prevail. It's unfortunate what happened to young Austin Metcalf, but things like that happen every single day. We got to do better. We just have to do better. So again, I want to thank y'all for joining me for another edition of the Replay, where we're still trying to make your day. Again, I have been your host, Jabril A. Rashad. Look forward to speaking with y'all again. And subscribe, like, and share so you'll get that notification button letting you know when I'm going on live. All right? Peace and love, and we'll be back in a minute.